Abhishek, I know something that you are really focused on in this area has a lot to do with risk. And so in a highly regulatory space, and especially with privacy, there is nothing more sacred to people, obviously, than their health privacy, data privacy surrounding that. So I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit more about that regulatory perspective, privacy, and that hallucination standpoint. And please do us a favor and explain hallucinations. I think if you're in your work, or I've heard that from some of our clients at Stanford, they're talking about hallucinations. And I'm like, wait a second, are you talking about like actual hallucinations? So I'd love for you to share that perspective.
Sure. So, Jamie, like I said, a generative AI has a lot of promise, but it has to be a measured step that everybody in the marketplace needs to take. Talking about risks, right? So you talked about a risk of data privacy, which is front and center in a very regulated ecosystem. If I am a patient, I would not want my patient treatment journey to be available on ChatGPT at any stretch, right? Won't I want my personal data be also available on, some of these ChatGPT large language modules? The other thing that you talked about, which is the risk when it comes to hallucinations. So the definition of hallucinations is, as you realize, the architecture of generative AI is that it is trained on these large language modules, which has a lot of data, right? But there are certain use cases or specific cases where that large language module does not have the answer. But by design, what will happen is it will give you a response which it does not have the data backing for. But because it has generative capabilities, it will try to back work towards the answer. So the case in point could be that as a result of reviewing some patient data or patient history, let us say that by design or by stroke of luck, we are not aware of the age of the patient, right? So the generative AI has this potential to generate what a treatment journey would be, even though that person's age is not known, which is the risk of hallucination. So it will prompt and give you data which is absolutely not applicable. Another risk that I believe, Jamie, is important is the risk of bias, or the big risk of ethics. As a person who is being treated by generative AI, are you telling the person that what part of your journey will be taken over by generative AI? That is an ethical consideration for health clinicians also when they're giving access in a particular case for a patient to just interact with a generative AI chatbot. Then there is an additional risk of bias, right? Now, again, to Vignesh's point, the underlying data is very important. And in a diverse ecosystem, in a diverse country like America, like India, you don't know when generative AI is throwing bias, right? And it is a very important consideration that all of us need to be mindful of. I believe from my vantage point, the Open AI, the Googles, the Bards are aware of this as a risk, right? Which is why they classify at least ChatGPT as your co-pilot. Okay, they don't say that it's a pilot in your journey, because there is always going to be a human in the loop, especially when it comes to healthcare ecosystem.
That is so important, right? So, and Vignesh, I think you mentioned this earlier too, right? So, like, the person who is operating the AI has so much influence